Hey Cafe crew, I've got a treat for you this week. I'm going to show you exactly how I take a photo from this to this. I'm going to show you my entire workflow, start to finish. I'm not going to skip anything. I'm not going to leave anything out. I hope you enjoy, kind of seeing all these different techniques working together in a real world workflow. Now, if you want to learn how to do any of those individual steps, just check out my channel or photoshopcafe.com, and all those tutorials are there showing every single one of those steps in depth. So right now, let's get started and let's make this image look awesome. So today I'm going to show you the entire workflow for working on images. We're going to do some exposure blending, which is 2 different exposures, and we're going to go all the way through to the finished photo. So I'm going to do something a little bit different. Normally I just kind of show 1 or 2 techniques. Today I'm going to show you my entire workflow, start to finish. So let's open these images. We're just going to choose File, Open. And I'm just going to select both of these and click Open. So these are going to open inside Camera Raw. So right now I'm working on the new Wacom Cintiq 16. Now this is not a sponsored video by Wacom or anything like that. But this is kind of nice because I can paint on my screen. Now you might have a different type of tablet, maybe an Intuos or something like that, and you can just follow along. I'll show you the settings as we go. And also if you're just using a mouse, you can also follow along. So it's not specific to the Cintiq, but I do just want to show you how nice it is to work on screen while I'm doing this. All right, so we've got 2 images here inside of Camera Raw. And the reason I've got 2 is because I set the exposure differently. These were shot on my DJI Phantom 4 Pro. And we can see this one's a little bit darker. It's going to be a little dark here for the rocks and things like that, but the sky looks really nice. And also I've got a little bit of that sunset. Whereas we go for the brighter shot here, we can see a little bit more detail here in the water and in the foreground and there. But if you look here, it's just kind of getting a little bit blown out as far as detail. So that's why I'm working on both of them. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hit the Shift key and I'm going to select both. And the reason I'm actually going to go to the top one here. And the reason I'm selecting them both is because I want to just play around with some white balance. And I want to make sure that they're both getting the same settings. That's why they're both selected at the same time. So if I go here, notice that they both turn blue. So I just want to do just those basic adjustments. We're going to come back and do some fine-tune adjustments later. So I just want to make sure that those are the same when it comes to that. And let's also go into the camera calibration settings. So we're just going to click on there. And we're just going to make sure we enable our profile. And we've got a built-in profile here on a DJI, so that's fine. And we're going to turn on remove chromatic aberration. Nice. All right, so now we're just going to separate these. Now that we've done that, I'm going to select the first one. And what we're looking for here is to just kind of punch some of this detail. So we're going to go in here. And I'm just going to open that up a little bit. There we go, just so I can just start to see the sky the way I want it. I'm going to pull back the highlights just a touch. And open up the shadows a little bit. Not too much, not too worried about it right there. So all we're doing is just some basic adjustments to get started. Now we're going to go in here. We're going to do the same thing. Let's have a look here. Maybe we can recover a lot of these highlights. And I definitely want to open up the shadows a lot. So this one I'm going to be using for our darker areas where they're going to be nice and bright. And this one here, the brighter areas are going to be dark. So I'm going to select them both. And now I'm just going to click Open Images. And now these are going to open in Photoshop. There we go. We've got 2 images. We've got our lighter one and we've got our darker one. Now I want to kind of blend these together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the darker one and we're just going to click on here on the Move tool and then just drag it into the other document, holding down the Shift key and then release. And then what that's done is it's just put them on top of each other. And then what we're doing here is we're just going to mask this out because I want the sky here. So I'm just going to select it and I'm going to create a new layer mask. Grab the gradient tool. Make sure I hit the D key to reset the foreground background colors. And we're going to go there to make sure we're doing foreground and background linear. Awesome. Okay, let's just kind of add this up here. And sometimes I go the wrong way, which I did that time. And I'm going to go there. That looks looking good, but maybe I'm going to make it a little bit more gradual, that blend. I want to, there we go. Let's go back this way. So I'm just trying different blends to see what looks good. I want to maintain some of the color here. And I think that's looking good. So if we hide the top, we can see all I've done is I've just added a little bit there in the top just to give us a little bit more punch. All right, so I kind of like that, just kind of blending these two together. So I'm just going to grab the mask here, and if I paint with a white brush, let me just grab my brush here. Notice what will happen is if I paint there, notice that I can darken up those areas. So if there's any areas I might want to darken up just a little bit, I'm just going to kind of go around here. So I'm just going to kind of go around the edges. Just, it's very subtle what I'm doing here. It's just kind of a vignette effect. I don't have to do anything at the top because that's already in there on the mask. Excellent. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to merge these two together. But rather than merge them, I'm going to right click and I'm going to convert to camera raw. Convert to a smart object. And now I can use the smart object in camera raw. So now I'm going to go filter and I'm going to do camera raw filter. So now I'm going to make my adjustments. But what I've done is, as you've noticed, is I've just kind of taken the sky from the other one, which is giving me a little bit more, it's just extending the dynamic range. So it gives me a little bit more to play around with here. So I'm going to open the shadows a little bit here. Let's take these highlights down quite a bit. I want to protect those. I'm just kind of playing around right now, trying to find a good balance. Maybe warm up that temperature a little bit more now. And I'm not going to go too far as putting contrast in here yet. I'll do that later. Okay, that's looking pretty good for an overall balance. It should be looking very low contrast, a little bit washed out, which is good for this stage. Now I'm going to do some dodging and burning. So what I'm going to do is just hold down the Alt or the Option key, create a new layer. And in this new layer, I'm going to change the mode to overlay blending mode. And I'm going to click on fill. Now you don't have to fill it with the neutral gray, by the way, to do this kind of dodging and burning. But the reason I'm doing that is if I want to use traditional dodge and burn tools in there, or I want to run any filters or anything like that, it's nice to have that neutral gray to work on. Otherwise, you're a little bit limited by some of the things you can do with the adjustments. That's why I do that. Okay, let's click OK. And there's our dodge and burn layer. And I'll just call this one D for dodge. And I'm going to duplicate it, just click and drag in there, and I'll call this one B for burn, which is going to be the darker one. Now I'm going to put the darker one underneath, and I'm going to start with that. So let me just grab the B. So we've got that there. And now what we want to do is paint with black. Now we also want to drop our opacity down. 20 is actually pretty good, and let's go into our brush settings. So under our brush settings, I'm going to choose the brush tip shape. I've got a nice soft edge brush. That's good. I like that. And then we're going to go into the brush dynamics. I'm going to turn on opacity for pen pressure. And that's it. I'm going to leave everything else off. If you're working from mouse, drop this down to maybe 10%. We're at 20 right now. And I want to have a large brush. So let's make this brush nice and big. I'm using the bracket keys on the keyboard. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to paint a little bit over here. In fact, let's make the brush huge. So all I'm going to do is just paint a little bit on the top there, going over that a couple of times. And we're just kind of darkening that area right now. Now I could use the tilt on here, the pen tilt, if I wanted to do different things. And I'm just going to go down here and just darken a little bit in the bottom. Okay, great. So now I'm going to switch over here to my dodge tool and make sure white is the foreground color, and the light is going to kind of come through here. So I want to just emphasize that a little bit, and maybe even give it a touch in here. So we've got a little extra light. So we're kind of just drawing the eye across the image like that. All right, so we've got all our big adjustments there. So what I want to do now is I want to go in here and I want to make some smaller adjustments in here, and I'm just going to work on my highlight area. I don't think I need to add any shadows on here because it's quite dark and shadowy already. So what I'm doing is dropping this down, working on my dodge layer or my highlight. I know the sun's coming from here, so I'm just going to emphasize these areas where the sun is going to be striking these rocks. And look at this, I'm just painting with light, and see how we can just really make that pop. And I want to do the same up here, just on some of these forward-facing parts of the image. Now, one of the things you can do sometimes is, if we want to just kind of zoom in, we can do that. And if I use the spacebar on the keyboard, I can kind of move over. All right, great. So I'm just looking at these forward-facing areas here, and I'm just going to be giving those a little touch. And here. I really want these to just kind of pop. And notice what I'm doing is I'm starting for very low opacity. And working like this, I can just slowly build this up rather than just do it all in one hit. Because when you do that, sometimes you can overdo it very easily. And I notice I'm going over there. You know what? We'll mask this out in a sec. So you can be sloppy. Doesn't matter. Technically, this area here would be in shadow, but I still want to open it up a little bit. Just to show a little bit more detail here in these rocks. And we could do this here as well, just gently on the land here. Let's make it look like we got a little bit of light hitting it. In fact, I'm going to hit the 3 key to bring that up to 30% opacity. And I just really want to just kind of pop that a little bit. And we can also do this with the water. So we know we've got some water coming in here. I'm just going to gently lighten up some of this. Not in this area. Well, maybe here I am. When it's kind of coming through here, maybe just give it a little touch of lightness. Make this nice and big so it's smooth. Once again, just using the space bar to scroll around. And maybe just give this a little touch over here where it's maybe picking up just a little bit of light. Nice. All right, so why don't I just clean this up? So what we need to do is just add a layer mask on here. And then I'm just going to paint with black. And I'm going to hit the 0 key to turn that up to 100% opacity. And let's make this brush nice and small. And see what I can do is I can just go around these edges now and I can just clean them up. So you can do the cleaning up at the end. Which means that while I'm, doing my dodging, I don't have to worry about being so precise. I'm going to keep the nice silhouette there on those birds. Just making sure there's no halos around there. Looking good. Same here. All right. And we can kind of see where we are now. It's looking pretty good. So at this point, what I like to do is I like to select everything. That's just holding it down, hitting the shift key and clicking again. And I'm going to put these inside another smart object. So I'm going to right click once again, convert to a smart object, and then everything's in one layer. And now I'm going to go back again, back into the camera raw filter. And now this is where I'm going to add my contrast and punch. I'm going to give this, I want to brighten it up a little bit more. Not brighten it, but warm it up a little. And the shadows, I want to open up those shadows a little bit because I feel like those are pretty dark in the clouds there. And recover these highlights. So what I'm doing right now is just recovering detail first. And now I'm going to give it, there we go, about there, looks good. Now I'm going to give it the contrast. So what we're going to do is take these blacks and we're going to pull them down. We're going to pull these whites, just kind of setting the contrast of how we want it. Touch of clarity, little touch of vibrance. Now this sky just feels very, very strong, so I'm going to create a gradient here, and we're going to do the sky independently. So I'm just going to click up here, and I'm just going to reset everything. And I'm going to open up the shadows, because these clouds are almost black, and I don't want that. So I'm just going to pull these shadows all the way up. Let's just kind of play around with that. And if we want this more gradual, we can kind of pull it up this way. Actually, here's good. And I'm going to lower the temperature down a little bit, so it's going to be a little cooler in the sky than it is everywhere else. Lightening up that exposure a little bit too, because I don't want this blowing it out, but I do want to recover all of those highlights. So I'm going to pull the highlights all the way down and maybe even pull down on the whites. Looking good. Give it a little touch of saturation just to bring out some of that orange color. And that's looking pretty good. Now, see this area where we've kind of gone over? We can grab the brush here. And if I hit the Alt or the Option key, this enables me to paint with the eraser. And obviously that's too big, so let's bring it down. I'm going to take that feather quite low. And let's take the size down further. And what I'm going to do is just paint in here, just carefully, because what I don't want to do is I don't want to have these areas being affected by that gradient. So I'm just kind of undoing those. Excellent. Now I'm just going to click the hand tool, and what that does is it just flattens it in. If I want to go back to the gradient, I just click on the gradient and I can do that. But now I just want to look at the overall image. It's getting quite close to what I'm wanting. I'm going to darken it down just a little bit. Feels good. I think I want to put a vignette on it. So we're going to hit the effects here, and we're going to take a vignette around the edge. We can play around with the midpoint there. I just want to get just on the edges. Maybe to about there. Feather a little bit more. Getting quite close. I'm going to take the contrast and just see what happens if I pull it up a little bit. Okay, so I want to just open up those shadows a little bit here. See that in the curves? And I feel like we're getting pretty close to a final result. I'm going to click OK. Now what I want to do is sharpen this, but I want to selectively sharpen it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this. Control or Command J will enable me to do that. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose Other. So we're going to go under here and we're going to choose Filter. And I'm going to choose a High Pass filter. And see what this does is it just enhances the edges. That's too much. So let's bring it up to about there. Now if you want to see what this looks like on the final image while we're doing it, rather than doing it there, I'll change it to Overlay Blending mode. And then we can go under here and we can choose Filter and we can go back again. And we're going to choose our High Pass again. Now our colors should go back to normal. And then what we're doing is we're just etching in detail. See that? So I kind of want that here on these rocks, but not so much there. Now the nice thing about doing it this way is if I create a mask, now I can use the pressure sensitivity. I'm going to choose black as a foreground color, and I'm just going to hit a 5 key. Well, let's grab a brush, of course. Hit the brush. Black is the foreground color. Let's set opacity to 50 by just tapping the 5 key. And what I can do now is I can paint away the sharpness in certain areas. So up here in the sky, I really don't want so much sharpness, and on the horizon. And maybe a little bit here I don't want. I'm just going to gently touch it so there's a little bit of sharpening, but not full sharpening over there. Around the edges, I'm just going to kind of get rid of that a little bit. And so I'm keeping the sharpness, maybe get rid of it there. So I'm keeping full sharpness on these areas and on the foreground area, and that's kind of just bringing the eye in. So there we go. You can see a before and an after. That's my workflow. As you can see, there's a lot of experimentation that goes on. So there's not, set in stone ways of doing things. A lot of the time when I'm doing a tutorial, I'll set a particular number because, I want to make it easy for you guys to follow. But as you can see here, I'm kind of following the workflow that I always follow, but I'm also doing kind of subjective decisions as I go. Like sometimes, do you want to darken this? Do you want to lighten it? Do I want to make this warmer or cooler? A lot of that really depends on the mood you're trying to get. So anyway, I've got a question for you guys. Do you like this kind of video, where I'm just giving you the whole workflow and you can actually see how I would work in real life? Or do you prefer the more focused tutorials which are more granular? So I know these are completely different, but I wanted to add this in because I wanted to give you guys a taste of, just maybe something a little bit different. Maybe some parts will click for you, you know, when you're, you know, watching the tutorials, maybe you're missing parts, whereas putting all of this together into one tutorial, maybe it's just going to kind of help that click a little bit. So let me know in the comments underneath what you guys think about this approach. Do you like this approach? Do you want to see more of this? Or would you prefer, you know, I kind of stick to the more granular, you know, working on, you know, certain techniques. So anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Smash that like button into dust. And if you like these kind of tutorials, hit that subscribe button right now and you'll get a new tutorial from me at least once a week. And hit that notification bell so you know when I upload it. So anyway, guys, thanks for watching. And until next time, I'll see you at the cafe.